Let's jump into it. You were very vocal when Lamar got his non-exclusive franchise tag tender placed in front of him, and a bunch of teams, when responding to requests for an answer, immediately said, we're not interested in Lamar. You started throwing quite a bit of collusion concepts out there on your Twitter feed. Do you think there's collusion going on right now to keep Lamar Jackson from an offer sheet being signed? Do you think?
Rich, I don't think there's collusion from him signing an offer sheet. I think what Jim Irsay said about guaranteed contracts and how he has looked at it in the MLB and the NBA and how it just hasn't been good for business, I think it's a universal thought process amongst all of the NFL owners. So for all these teams to say, we'll go get Jimmy G, we'll go get Deshaun Watson, we would pay Joe Burrow all of this money, and all of those guys have all been injured in their careers, and it's never prevented a team from going out and getting them. So I truly believe that this Lamar Jackson thing isn't that teams don't want him as a player. It's not that they don't think he's a phenomenal talent. Heck, the Washington Commanders GM Martin Mayhew even came out and said, he's a special guy, but we're not interested. Ron Rivera said, we didn't even look into it. If that doesn't sound like collusion or like a concerted effort to not even give a guy an opportunity who is raging against the machine to sign an offer sheet, I don't know what is. And as you know, I've been very vocal about it, and I'm more than willing to continue to dive into it with you.
So, yeah, no, absolutely, because I think Washington should do it. But I'm also, not privy to any of their conversations where, maybe after Carson Wentz and everything else that they tried, they're like, we did. Why can't they just really dig Sam Howell, and go in that direction? And then we'll find out later on what a silly move that was, as Lamar finally does wind up on another team and is hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. And the same thing with Desmond, Ritter in Atlanta. We had Thomas Dimitroff on. I'm like, walk me through why they're not interested in Atlanta, best of your knowledge, knowing the front office. And he's like, well, they just got out of cap hell that he kind of put them in. And he said, we'll have a conversation later on as to the reasons why he did what he did when he was GM there. But they finally just got out of it. They drafted the kid. They love the kid. And they don't want to switch up. They'd rather put their money in a safety or money in here. And then I think you also know that there's a conversation around the league about, Lamar not finishing the last 2 years. And you put it all together, and 2 first-round picks and a ton of money guaranteed to somebody that you would be just meeting right now, dropped in your lap because you didn't even think it would be possible that you could sign him. They thought it would just a franchise tag full on coming your way. That might lead to a lot of these situations. Robert.
Yeah, I think when you piece it all together, you can find reasons as to why, or try to justify why teams aren't going after Lamar Jackson. But at the end of the day, common sense prevails. It makes zero sense for a team to come out and say, you know what, we're thinking about, using a first-round pick to go get an unproven quarterback in the draft instead of using 2 first-rounders to go get a proven quarterback in Lamar Jackson, who's a unanimous MVP and 26 years old. So that's where I come from. And obviously I've mentioned that I think Lamar's fighting the machine that is the NFL, whether that's NFL agents, NFL GMs and owners, along with NFL insiders. But it really is, because the quarterback position, Rich, is a sacred position, right? When you get that contract, agent negotiating a contract for a quarterback can help him take care of every single one of his other clients on just that one quarterback contract. Say $250 million guaranteed, 1% of that would be $2.5 million. They're set. They can go for the next 5-6 years and take care of 20 other clients because of that one quarterback. So when you take that away from them, and you're a guy like Lamar Jackson, and you're trying to do it without an agent, without the ties to the NFL insiders, you're affecting everybody's bottom line. Now, I'm not saying that teams don't want to win football games and they're not going to go after Lamar because he's doing that by himself. What I'm saying is it doesn't make any sense. We can put up all the names of guys that have missed games over the past couple seasons and how much money they got paid, and you're telling me they're not even willing to think about going and talking to Lamar Jackson? They don't even know what Lamar Jackson wants because they haven't even picked up the phone to call him and talk about an offer potentially.
Well, the problem with that too is, and again, I want you to understand, I think some teams should go run the risk here and do it, whatever risk that may be. And I pegged Washington, Atlanta, and Indianapolis because they also don't have quarterbacks and situations that they've already had there, with all due respect to the second-year players and Ritter and Howell. Because if you sign this guy to an offer sheet, whatever quarterback's there would be like, what gives? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? I thought this was my gig. They don't have those issues. So, what I'm pushing back here on the agent front is if you want to get this highly complicated deal done, which obviously Lamar wants, and he wants to get the money that he thinks he deserves, and he wants to get the security that he deserves and the spot where there are, receivers that he feels he deserves, right?
Right.
If he wants that to get done, you're going to have to convince somebody to stroke you the check, and you're going to have to convince a coach to do it, right? And with all due respect, if you're a general manager and you find out Ken Francis is on the phone for Lamar Jackson, you're like, who? Or you're Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft comes up to you and says, hey, Meek Mill says Lamar wants to come here. Don't you think there's a better front foot forward on that business front? Robert?
Yeah, Rich, I think the question you're asking is, should Lamar have an agent? And I would repurpose the question and say, is he being hurt by not having an agent? I think he is right now because he's not able to fight these types of battles.
Right.
Agents don't just represent players. These agencies represent players. They represent coaches. And when we talk about free agency and the legal tampering period, you know this, Rich.
Yeah.
Agents are always tampering, okay? They're constantly negotiating for their players throughout seasons, talking to coaches, and that's where Lamar doesn't have that connection because they actually have to call him. And what I would say on Lamar's front is they're not even picking up the phone. So for Robert Kraft to say Meek Mill is saying this, or there's the stuff about Ken Francis, which Lamar has already come out and says the guy's not negotiating for him, to correct that narrative. My problem is they're not even picking up the phone. How do you know what you're thinking about or what you're going to do in regards to Lamar Jackson if you're not even giving him a chance? And that's where I've seen teams come out when as soon as it happened, they say, we're not interested. Now there's teams at the league meeting saying, we didn't even look into it. Why would you not look into a quarterback of Lamar's caliber? Whereas if it was Joe Burrow on the non-exclusive franchise tag, or if it was Justin Herbert on the non-exclusive franchise tag, all these teams would be interested, it would seem. But for some reason, for Lamar Jackson, that's not the case. And I do think him not having an agent has hurt him in that regard. But it goes well beyond that, and that's why I do believe there is collusion going on.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.